Welcome to the Rose Garden, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to introduce the acting director of OMB, Jack Lew, who's going to present these fantastic new numbers to the president, and then the president will make his remarks. But before I open, on behalf of the president, I would like to acknowledge all the members of the tremendous economic team at the White House who are gathered here. Secretary of the Treasury, Bob Rubin, Chairman of the National Economic Council, Gene Sperling, Secretary of Commerce, Bill Daley, Secretary of Labor, Alexis Herman, Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, Janet Yellen, Deputy Secretary of Treasury, Larry Summers, and of course the President's management team here at the White House, headed by Erskine Bowles, his Chief of Staff, and I believe John Podesta, one of his deputies, along with Sylvia Matthews, is also here. I'm proud to be a part of this team, and I'm proud that we're gathered here today on such a beautiful occasion to witness a new announcement from President Clinton about our progress in putting America's fiscal house in order. We've come to this historic Rose Garden to declare that the economy is in full bloom, no signs of wilting. But 5 years ago, of course, as you will remember, when President Clinton and I first took office, about the only thing growing was the budget deficit. And the only thing rosy was the budget scenario, the set of assumptions of the previous 12 years that had really shattered confidence that announcements about economic policy from here would really hold up. But with President Clinton's steadfast and courageous leadership, we charted a brand new economic course for the country, merging three elements never before tried in combination: fiscal discipline based on real numbers and hard choices, open markets, and strategic investments in the things that matter, like education and the environment and job training and research and development. In 1993 and in 1997, President Clinton took on the status quo and won great victories for the American people. As you will remember, passing the new plan wasn't easy because the naysayers and backseat budgeteers were always there to tell us that we could never dry up that sea of red ink, we could never cut taxes for the middle class, never invest in the future, all at the same time. But today it's clear that they were wrong. Our plan was right for America's future. The sun is shining in more ways than one. In part, we proved them wrong by reinventing government, reducing the size of government to the smallest level since President Kennedy's administration. And we also passed the first progressive budget in a generation to invest in the things that can create the growth that has enabled us to have these great results. Well, this all is a testament to the will and the vision of President Clinton, and we're all happy that we can continue to have this kind of good news coming forward. And part of the secret has been the President's determination to surround himself with an economic team of real all-stars. And our brand new nominee for budget director and our acting budget director is really a veteran, and it is fitting that he would be here to present these new numbers to the President. And it's my pleasure to bring him to the podium now, Jack Lew.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. President, it's an honor to be here at this extraordinary moment in our history. Not even the most optimistic of us who joined this administration at the outset expected that our strict policy of fiscal discipline would result only 5 years later in a balanced budget and more. In February, you sent to Congress the first balanced budget in 30 years. Today, it's my pleasure to report to you that you have reached balance a year early. Mr. President, you have demonstrated that it is indeed possible to balance both the budget and your priorities, cutting the deficit while investing in the future. Mr. Vice President, your reinvention efforts have reduced the federal workforce by more than 300,000 and given us a government that works better and costs less. OMB's mid-session review is a comprehensive and official update of both spending and revenues, reflecting the most recent economic conditions. It is a thorough evaluation by this administration's economists and analysts of the broad range of factors on which budget outcomes depend. There has been much speculation this spring about April revenue collections. This report reflects actual receipts through the April tax filing season and gives immediacy to your policy, Mr. President, to save Social Security first. I am pleased to present this mid-session review, which affirms the extraordinary path of economic growth to come. Breaking with a long string of such documents, this report now predicts surpluses as far as the eye can see. This is the first time in a generation that we have the opportunity to set priorities from such a position of such extraordinary fiscal strength. OMB's mid-session review confirms officially your remarkable accomplishment. We now have a surplus to save so that we can fix Social Security first.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jack, and let me thank the other members of the economic team. This is, of course, very good news for the American people, as the chart shows. Now it's official that this year, well ahead of the most ambitious schedule, America has balanced the budget. In fact, as the chart shows, the achievement of the American people will not stop there. OMB predicts that the budget surplus will be $39 billion this year, the largest dollar surplus in our history, the largest surplus as a share of the economy in more than 40 years. America can now turn off the deficit clock and plug in the surplus clock. Given the speed with which our nation has reached this remarkable milestone, it is perhaps all too easy to forget how hard it was and how far we've come. Just 6 years ago, because of the drag of deficits, our people were running in place, our nation was falling behind. Interest rates were high and so was unemployment. On the day I took office, the deficit was projected this year to be $350 billion. How did this greatest projected deficit in history turn into the greatest projected surplus? The old-fashioned way. We earned it. Our nation earned it as a result of hard work by the American people. And as the Vice President said, we earned it here in Washington with the help of two visionary actions in Congress. First, the courageous vote by the Democrats in 1993 in the midst of withering, extreme criticism that led to a cut in the deficit of 90%. And then the truly historic bipartisan balanced budget agreement passed by Congress last year that finished the job. I think it would also be wrong if I didn't mention, as Mr. Lieu did, that the reinventing government efforts headed by the Vice President played a major role. We not only have the smallest government since the Kennedy administration, with more than 300,000 fewer people, we also have savings in excess of $130 billion during the budget period as a result of those efforts. And Mr. Vice President, I am very grateful for what you have done. Now that we're about to have the first surplus since Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, we face a crucial decision about what to do with it. We can use these good times to honor those who've put in a lifetime of work and prepare for the future retirement of the baby boomers by saving the Social Security system for generations to come. Or we can give in to the temptation in this election year to squander our surpluses the moment they start coming in. I think the choice is clear. We got to where we are today with 4.3% unemployment, more than 15 million new jobs, the lowest inflation in over 30 years, low interest rates, high growth, the highest home ownership in history, by doing what was right for the American economy over the long run. That is what we should do now. Social Security has been a cornerstone of our society for the last 6 decades, but the present system is not sustainable as we look forward to the full retirement of the baby boom generation. We have to protect it for the 21st century. I was deeply heartened after I spoke about this at the State of the Union that there were broad public statements of support from the leaders of both parties in both houses in Congress about saving Social Security first. However, in recent weeks, senior Republican leaders in the House of Representatives seem to have retreated from that pledge. In this election year, some now want to raid the surplus for initiatives instead of preserving every penny of the surplus until we strengthen Social Security. We cannot ignore the long-term challenge, which we have a unique opportunity and responsibility to meet now, in favor of short-term schemes that, however popular in the moment, could compromise our future. Let me be clear. I will oppose any budget that fails to set aside the surpluses until we have strengthened Social Security for the 21st century. Let me also be clear, that does not mean that in the future there could never be a tax cut. It simply means that we need to know how we're going to pay for the challenges of reforming Social Security. Once we know that, and we should know that sometime next year, I would hope early next year because of the work being done this year, then we can have a debate about what ought to be done if there are funds that still are unaccounted for and unobligated. Today, our economy is the envy of the world, but the progress was not predestined, nor is its future guaranteed. We cannot abandon the strategy of fiscal discipline and investments in the future, which has brought us to this moment. Instead, we should work together across party lines to maintain fiscal responsibility, to save Social Security first, to prepare for an even brighter future. Again, let me thank the members of the economic team, those who are here and those who preceded them, for their work in this remarkable effort, and every member of Congress whose votes have contributed to it. Thank you very much.
Over the weekend, those same Republican leaders, I defer to Sarah.
She has, well, let me say that we are very concerned about that, Sarah. And I asked John Koskinen, formerly a deputy at OMB, and before that, a man who had a very distinguished career in the private sector, to come back into public service to supervise and coordinate our efforts to deal with the Computer 2000 problem. It's not something that grabs the headlines every day, but it is in fact a profound challenge, not only for the United States, but for every country, which is every country now, that has extensive reliance on computers. And there are a lot of very complex questions. There are computer hookups where people at both ends have computers that can be programmed to move easily to 2000, but there's something in the connection in between which won't. So this is a very complicated problem. Interestingly enough, we discussed it in some detail at the G8 meeting in England recently, and I can tell you that we are working very hard on it. We're working very hard, first of all, to monitor the progress of every government agency to see that they're ready, and some are doing better than others because some have more profound challenges than others. And secondly, we want to do what we can to be supportive of the private sector in the United States in their efforts to make these adjustments. But it is a very big problem, and I would urge, since you've asked the question, I would urge everyone in America who hears this exchange to make sure that they have done everything they can do within their own business sectors to be ready for this. And we also agreed, by the way, when I was in England, to work with other countries so that we can help share information and do everything we can to make sure that when the new millennium starts, it's a happy event and not a cyberspace headache.
Over the weekend, Republican leaders called on you to postpone your trip to China, or at the very least, not have a welcoming ceremony in Tiananmen Square. What will you do, sir?
Well, I think it would be a mistake to postpone the trip to China. Our partnership with China has succeeded in persuading the Chinese not to transfer missile technology and other dangerous materials to nations that we believe should not have them. We have seen some advances on the human and political rights fronts recently. We have worked closely with them in North Korea. Today we are working with them to try to diffuse the tension and prevent a new nuclear race in South Asia. So I think we have a broad range of issues to deal with, and I think we have enough evidence now to justify the partnership that we've had. So I believe we ought to go forward.
Mr. President.
Orders are coming in.